I had always imagined my wedding day as a fairy tale, the kind with twinkling lights, a dreamy white dress, and a venue that felt like something out of a romantic movie. Ever since I was a little girl, I had a vision, a breathtaking ceremony surrounded by my loved ones, celebrating the start of a new life with the man I loved. And I was not just dreaming, I was planning. My fiance, Ryan, and I had been saving for years, making careful sacrifices to ensure that when our big day arrived, it would be everything we wanted. Every skipped vacation, every homemade meal instead of a fancy dinner out, every dollar tucked away, it was all for that perfect wedding. At least, that was what I thought. Enter my mother-in-law, Margaret, or, as I like to call her in my head, Queen Margaret the Terrible. From the moment I met her, she had made it painfully clear that she did not like me. Not because I was a bad person, not because I had done anything wrong. No, it was something much worse in her eyes. I was not good enough for her son. Margaret was one of those women who believed that no one, absolutely no one, could ever deserve her precious baby boy. She had controlled Ryan's life in every possible way, from choosing what clothes he wore to deciding where he went to college. And when I came into the picture, I was a threat to her power. At first, I tried. Really, I did. I wanted her approval. I wanted to be the perfect daughter-in-law who could make her happy. I complimented her, offered to help around her house, even tolerated her constant backhanded insults. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be enough for her. Things got worse when Ryan proposed. Instead of being happy for us, Margaret turned the engagement into a nightmare. Oh dear, she had sighed dramatically when she saw the ring on my finger. That is cute. I mean, it is small, but I'm sure it is fine for you. Small? Ryan had worked so hard to buy me that ring. It was beautiful, meaningful, and absolutely perfect. But Margaret did not see it that way. She saw it as inferior. She started pushing for us to change our wedding plans. You should have the wedding at my country club, she suggested, completely ignoring our preference for an intimate garden ceremony. When I told her we had our own vision for the wedding, she scoffed. Sweetheart, I have been to more weddings than you can count. Trust me, you will thank me later. I held my ground. I was not going to let her bulldoze her way into controlling our special day. Ryan backed me up, telling his mother that we had our own ideas and that this was our wedding, not hers. That did not sit well with Margaret, and then it happened. One evening, while reviewing our wedding budget, I noticed something strange. Our savings account, the one where we had carefully stored every penny for our dream wedding, was drained. Not just a little. Not just a minor discrepancy. It was empty. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a glitch. Maybe the bank had made an error. My hands trembled as I checked transaction after transaction, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. And that was when I saw it, a wire transfer to Margaret's account. I felt my stomach drop. I called Ryan, my voice shaking. Did you? Did you give your mom our wedding fund? His silence was deafening. And then, he said the words that made my entire body go numb. She said she needed it. It was just sitting there, and I did not hear the rest. My ears were ringing too loudly. Ryan had given our entire wedding fund to his mother, without asking me, without even telling me. The wedding we had planned, the dream we had built together, gone. But the worst part? Margaret did not even need the money. I found out later that she had used it for a luxury vacation to Europe. She had booked a 5-star resort in Italy, shopping sprees in Paris, and spa treatments in Santorini. While I had been carefully budgeting for our dream wedding, she had been sipping champagne on a yacht in the Mediterranean with our money. I had never felt such rage in my life. And that was when I decided. If Margaret thought she could get away with this, she was dead wrong. She had stolen my wedding fund. Now, I was going to make her regret it in the worst way. I sat in silence, staring at the screen, my hands clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Every dollar we had saved gone. And for what? So Margaret could prance around Europe like a queen while I sat here with a destroyed wedding? I felt a surge of emotions, betrayal, anger, disbelief. But most of all, a burning need for revenge. I took a deep breath and dialed Ryan's number again. My voice was eerily calm, too calm. Tell me you're joking. Tell me that you didn't just let your mother steal our wedding fund. Baby, listen, Ryan stammered. It was just sitting there, and my mom needed. She needed a luxury vacation? I snapped. Ryan, we worked for that money. Do you even understand what you've done? She said she would pay it back, he insisted. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. And you actually believed her? Silence. He had nothing to say because deep down, he knew the truth. Margaret had no intention of paying us back. She had taken the money because she could, because she always got what she wanted. But not this time. Ryan, listen carefully, I said, my voice turning ice cold. Either you get our money back, or I will. And trust me, you won't like how I do it. Then I hung up. I knew one thing for certain. Margaret had never faced real consequences in her life. She had manipulated, controlled, and walked over people for years, especially Ryan. He was too used to bending to her will, too blinded by the need for her approval. But me? I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. I needed a plan that would hit her where it hurt the most. Then it hit me. Margaret's prized possessions, her social status, reputation, and control over Ryan. That's where I would strike. First, I started digging. I knew Margaret loved showing off to her high society friends. She had spent years cultivating an image of wealth, power, and influence. And nothing was more important to her than her standing in her social circle. I also knew something she didn't think I did. Margaret wasn't as rich as she pretended to be. Oh, sure, she lived in a big house and dressed in designer clothes, but behind the scenes, she was drowning in debt, credit card bills, overdue payments, and a mortgage that was barely hanging on. She lived off appearances, not actual money. And that meant if I pushed her just right, her entire world would come crashing down. Margaret had one weakness that she would do anything to protect: her reputation. She was part of an exclusive social club, the kind where rich housewives sipped expensive wine and gossiped about who was falling apart behind closed doors. So, I made sure they found out the truth. I created an anonymous email account and sent a detailed message to every one of Margaret's socialite friends. The email contained proof of her financial struggles, unpaid bills, and most importantly, how she had stolen her own son's wedding fund to fund her fake luxurious lifestyle. I made sure to include receipts, screenshots of the bank transfer, the vacation bookings, and even her credit card debts. Everything. The next time Margaret went to her club, she was greeted with whispers, side eyes, and awkward silence. No one wanted to associate with a fraud. When she called Ryan that night, I could hear the panic in her voice even through the speakerphone. Ryan, someone is spreading lies about me. Everyone at the club thinks I'm some kind of thief. You have to fix this. Ryan turned to me, confused and panicked. Did you? I smiled sweetly. Oh, Ryan, I thought you said it wasn't a big deal, that she was going to pay us back. He had no response. Margaret had always bragged about her flawless credit score and expensive tastes. She had spent years looking down on me, acting like I was beneath her. So, I decided to show her what it felt like to lose everything. I had access to her bank statements, thanks to Ryan's terrible password habits, and I knew exactly how deep in debt she was. She had been barely making minimum payments on her credit cards. So, I did what any scorned woman would do. I made sure the banks knew she was a credit risk. Using an anonymous tip line, I notified her credit card companies that she was living beyond her means. I flagged suspicious spending habits and requested fraud checks on her accounts. This triggered an immediate freeze on her credit cards, right before she was about to pay for her next shopping spree. When she tried to use her card the next day, declined. When she called the bank in a rage, they told her they were conducting an audit on her account. Her carefully crafted image of wealth shattered. Ryan was still trying to convince himself that his mother wasn't as bad as I made her out to be. But then I had one last conversation with Ryan. I laid it all out. The lies, the manipulation, the stolen money, the fact that she had never cared about his happiness, only about control. And then I gave him a choice. You either stand up to your mother and demand she gives us our money back, or we're done. It was brutal. It was harsh, but it worked. The next day, Ryan did something he had never done before. He confronted his mother. And for the first time in his life, He didn't back down. Margaret tried every trick in the book: guilt tripping, crying, playing the victim. But Ryan? He saw through it. He told her that if she didn't return the money, she would be cut off. No more support. No more son who would run to her every time she called. Nothing. Margaret had never faced real consequences before. But now, she had no choice. She wired the money back the same day, every last cent. And as for Margaret's reputation, it was ruined beyond repair. Her social circle had turned against her. Her finances were in shambles. And worst of all, she had lost the one thing she always thought she could control, Ryan. She had stolen my wedding fund. I had taken everything from her in return. With the money finally back in my account, I should have felt relieved. Victorious, even. But as I stared at the numbers on the screen, a bitter realization settled in. Ryan had let this happen. Yes, he had finally stood up to his mother. Yes, he had forced her to return the money. But only because I had backed him into a corner. Would he have done it on his own? Probably not. And that was the problem. I looked at him across the room, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. His face was calm, like we could just go back to normal now that the crisis was over. But for me, nothing would ever be the same again. I had spent years believing Ryan was my perfect match, that we were a team, an unbreakable partnership. But after everything, I could not shake the feeling that maybe I was wrong. Because here was the truth. If I had not found out about the stolen money, he would not have told me. If I had not fought for it, he would not have stood up to his mother. And if Margaret asked him for another favor in the future, would he really say no? The thought made my stomach turn. I was not just angry at Margaret anymore. I was angry at myself for ignoring the red flags, for thinking love was enough. But love is not enough. Not when respect is missing. I needed to do something that would make my feelings clear. I needed a move so bold, so undeniable, that it would leave no room for doubt. So I decided to make Margaret watch me have the wedding she never wanted me to have. On my terms. Without her son. The next morning, I called Ryan into the kitchen. My voice was steady. I want to talk about the wedding. Relief flashed across his face. Yeah, finally. I know everything got messed up, but we can get back on track now. We have the money and, I shook my head. Ryan, I do not think I want to marry you anymore. Silence. He blinked, like he had not heard me. Wait. What? I took a deep breath. You betrayed me. His mouth opened then closed. I did not mean to. It was just. You let your mother steal from me. From us. And you did not stop her. She gave it back. He argued, desperate now. I smiled sadly. Only because I forced you to make her. Do you even understand how much that hurts? He had no answer. I could see it in his face. He knew I was right. I love you, Ryan, I admitted. But love is not enough. I need to be with someone who would have never let this happen in the first place. Tears welled in his eyes. So, what? You are just leaving me? I nodded. I am. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt free. Most people, after calling off a wedding, would cancel everything. But me? I had a better idea. I still had the venue. I still had the dress. The invitations, the flowers, the catering, everything was already set. So why waste it? Instead of a wedding, I threw the most extravagant freedom party imaginable. I invited everyone, friends, family, coworkers. Even some of Margaret's socialite friends who had turned their backs on her. The theme? New beginnings. And just to twist the knife a little deeper, I made sure Margaret got an invite. She did not RSVP, but I knew she saw it. I knew she was seething. And on the day of the party, as I walked into the venue in my wedding dress, because why should a perfectly good dress go to waste? I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Happiness. Margaret had tried to take everything from me. But in the end, I won. The night of the freedom party was everything I could have hoped for. Laughter, music, celebration. The people who truly cared about me were there, supporting my decision to walk away from a life that would have never made me happy. But even as I smiled, danced, and toasted to my new beginning, I knew one thing for certain. Margaret was not done with me yet. And I was right. Because while I was busy celebrating my independence, Margaret was plotting one last desperate move. It happened right in the middle of the party. The DJ had just switched to an upbeat song, and my best friend was pulling me onto the dance floor when I heard the gasps. I turned, and there she was, Margaret, standing in the entrance like some kind of soap opera villain, dressed in an expensive navy blue gown, her hairstyle to perfection. For a second, the entire party froze. Then whispers. What is she doing here? Does she not realize this is not a wedding anymore? But of course, she knew. She was here for one reason, to cause a scene. I smirked, picking up my champagne glass. Margaret, did not expect to see you here. She plastered on a fake smile. Oh, I just could not miss such a special event. My best friend Olivia leaned in and muttered, she is about to make this all about her, is not she? I nodded. Of course she was. And she wasted no time. Margaret strode forward, eyes scanning the room, probably searching for Ryan. When she did not find him, she sighed dramatically. This is also sad, is not it? She announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. I mean, a beautiful wedding, a wonderful couple completely destroyed. Some guests exchanged glances, uncomfortable. Others rolled their eyes. I, however, sipped my champagne. I would not say destroyed. More like upgraded. Margaret's nostrils flared. You threw away my son, and for what? A party? I tilted my head. Oh, Margaret. I did not throw him away. I freed him. Gasps. A few chuckles. Someone whispered, damn, she really said that. Margaret, however, was not amused. You ruined this family, she snapped. I raised an eyebrow. No, Margaret, you did. You stole from us. You humiliated your own son. You put your selfishness above his happiness. And you thought you could get away with it. For the first time, Margaret faltered. Her socialite friends were here. The same ones who had already turned against her after I exposed her financial mess. And now? They were seeing her true colors in real time. She was losing control. And I was just getting started. Margaret, I said, stepping closer, lowering my voice just enough so only she could hear. You lost. You stole from me, and I made sure you paid for it. You wanted to control Ryan, and now? He sees you for what you are. You came here to make a scene, but all you did was prove to everyone that I was right about you. Margaret opened her mouth, but no words came out. Checkmate. The silence stretched. The entire room was watching. Then, without another word, Margaret turned on her heel and stormed out. And that was the last time she ever tried to interfere in my life. As I watched her go, something inside me clicked. For years, I had been fighting battles I should not have had to fight. I had been begging for respect from people who never intended to give it to me. But now, I was done. The party continued. The music got louder. The drinks kept flowing. And as I laughed with my friends, danced without a care in the world, and looked around at the people who truly mattered, I knew I had won. Margaret had tried to take everything from me. But in the end, I was the one who walked away stronger. Margaret was gone. The Freedom Party had been a success. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. But as the days passed, I realized something. Walking away from a toxic relationship is not just about one dramatic moment. It is not about a grand exit or a mic drop moment in front of an audience. It is about what happens next, because once the excitement fades and the adrenaline settles, you are left with something terrifying. The unknown. I had expected Margaret to lash out, to send me long, guilt-tripping messages, to spread rumors about me to anyone who would listen. But surprisingly, she stayed silent. Ryan, however, not so much. The text started a day after the party. Can we talk? I do not understand how you could just throw everything away. We can fix this, please. You still love me. I know you do. And the worst one, I chose you over my mother. Does not that mean anything? That text hit me hard. Because I knew Ryan was not a bad person. He was not evil. He was not cruel. But he was weak. And I could not spend the rest of my life fighting battles that he should have been fighting on his own. So, after 3 days of ignoring his messages, I finally replied, I did love you, Ryan. But love is not enough. I deserve someone who would have never put me in that position in the first place. Please do not contact me again. And just like that, I closed the door on him forever. I did not actively keep up with Margaret after that, but the universe has a funny way of handing out karma. A few months later, I got a call from Olivia. "Oh my God, you are not going to believe this," she said, barely containing her excitement. "Try me." Margaret's social circle. They dropped her. I blinked. "What?" "She is officially an outcast," Olivia explained. After the whole wedding fund theft went public, people started digging. Turns out, Margaret has been borrowing money from her friends for years, always promising to pay it back, but never actually doing it. And now? They have all cut her off. I could not help it. I laughed because Margaret had spent her whole life obsessing over status, over appearances, over making sure everyone saw her as the perfect, wealthy, respected woman, and now? She had nothing. No connections. No support. And from what Olivia told me, not even Ryan was picking up her calls anymore. The irony was almost too good. She had stolen from me to maintain her reputation. And in the end, that reputation was the very thing that destroyed her. For so long, my life had revolved around fighting against Margaret's manipulation, arguing with Ryan, trying to prove my worth to people who never truly valued me. But now, it was just me. And for the first time in years, I had to ask myself, what do I actually want? I had spent so much time planning a wedding, but I had never stopped to think about what I wanted beyond that. Did I want to stay in this city? Did I want to focus on my career? Did I want to travel, start fresh somewhere else? For the first time in a long time, my life was mine. And that realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. One evening, a few months after the party, I was sitting in my apartment, scrolling through my emails when I saw it. An email from an unknown sender. The subject line? "I should have listened to you." I clicked on it, my stomach twisting. And as I read the message, my eyes widened. Because it was from Ryan. And what he had to say changed everything. Margaret was gone. Ryan was out of my life. And for the first time in years, I felt free. But freedom, I quickly learned, is both exhilarating and terrifying. Because when you spend so long fighting battles, you forget what it is like to just exist without conflict, to wake up without stress, to live for yourself and no one else. And that was the journey I found myself on, the journey of rediscovering who I was beyond all the chaos. Healing did not happen overnight. There were moments when I questioned everything, when I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I should have given Ryan another chance, if, deep down, Margaret was just a broken woman acting out of fear. But then I would remember the years of manipulation, the lies, the gaslighting, the way I had begged for basic decency and been denied time and time again. And I would remind myself, I did the right thing. The best part of healing? Reclaiming the things that made me happy. I threw myself into my career, into hobbies I had once abandoned, into friendships that had been neglected. I traveled to places I had only dreamed of visiting. I met new people, people who saw me for who I was and not who they wanted me to be. I learned to love my own company, to find joy in the quiet moments, to embrace the kind of peace that once felt foreign to me. And then, one day, something happened. Something I never expected. Love found me again. But this time, it was different. There were no battles to fight, no constant need to prove my worth. There was only ease, laughter, partnership. Someone who met me where I was, who never made me feel like I had to shrink myself to be loved. And that was when I knew walking away from Ryan was not just about escaping toxicity. It was about making space for something better. Margaret's downfall had been inevitable. Her lies, her greed, her selfishness, it all caught up to her in the end. But the real victory? It was not her suffering. It was my happiness. Because I did not just survive what she put me through, I thrived despite it. And if there is one thing I have learned from all of this, it is that true strength is not about winning against those who try to break you. It is about walking away and choosing joy. Choosing yourself. Choosing a life that feels like freedom. And that is exactly what I did.